In the unknown side of WoW, we will be going over hidden things, NPC references, lore, and bits and pieces of the history of the game. Lots of interesting small things which wouldn't fit in their own video. First up, let's go with an unknown NPC. Located on a small tip of land just east of the Firewing Point in the Terracar Forest is an NPC named David Wayne. Unless you have the quest chain which would send you to him, then he simply has a couple of dialogue options which basically state that he was part of the Sons of Lothar, and then decided to head on his own as he thought he should be part of something larger. If you do his quest chain, it's a very long series of events which send you into 4 separate dungeons to collect items, which will eventually culminate in creating a weapon that has a lot of extra attack power when fighting against demons. And the stats on the weapon are about equivalent to an epic quality item when fighting demons, despite the fact that all of the weapons are of blue quality. Although, with how many dungeons you have to run in order to forge the weapon, there's a good chance you would have found a better weapon by the time you've completed the quest chain. So it was never a necessary thing to do, or even really that good once you got to the content that involved killing demons in the Burning Crusade. And there's a Hearthstone card called the Master Swordsmith, which shows David Wayne crafting the demonic blade in its artwork. Now, here's what's notable about this NPC. He was theorized to be the second son of Alexandros Morgraine. In Vanilla WoW, there were some pieces of lore that stated that the second son of Alexandros was living in the Outland, and would be able to reform the Ashbringer. Because remember, they had originally planned on giving players the Ashbringer in Vanilla WoW before changing their mind. So there was a lot of groundwork laid for the eventual reveal of the Ashbringer that they eventually abandoned and never did anything with until Legion. So players speculated that this master blacksmith, who helped to create weapons that are really good against demons, was the most likely candidate to be the second son of the previous wielder of the Ashbringer, based on those rumors. However, once Wrath of the Lich King came out, it was revealed that Darion Morgraine was actually the second son, and we meet him immediately upon doing the Death Knight intro scenario. Now, let's look over the hidden story of Caretaker Dilandrus. Located near Honorhold is an NPC who tends the gravestones, which many Alliance players will be familiar with if they've ever died in the Outlands. There are no quests that send you to Caretaker Dilandrus, and there's no special lore associated to him either. He just simply walks around the gravestones, and occasionally will place flowers on top of them. If you go up and talk to him, he'll tell you that he was actually born in Outlands, and as a boy, he always dreamed about going back to his homeland of Azeroth, and had heard all kinds of stories about how much nicer it was, with actual grass, oceans, and big blue skies. Unfortunately, both of his parents passed away when he was young, and as he grew up, he joined the Sons of Lothar, and took it upon himself to take care of his parents' gravestones, as well as all the others from the family members lost at Honorhold. And he laments that he no longer wishes to leave this place, as it's his duty to take care of this one little job, as there's even piles of gravestones nearby waiting to be used, as Outlands is a pretty dangerous place. Now, there's nothing really else known about Caretaker Dilandrus. There's not even really a reason to talk to him. He was basically put in by Blizzard in order to fill out the world more, and there's lots of NPCs like this, which is one of the joys at looking at the unknown side of WoW. And now for some information about the earliest versions of the game. Did you know Paladins did not have a taunt in Vanilla WoW at all? And the reason they didn't have a taunt is actually kind of funny. Some Blizzard class designers from the time said they intended for the Protection Paladin to have the ability to tank, but they were afraid that it would be too powerful. You see, Paladins were kind of rushed out in WoW's launch, as they had a whole bunch of reworks right as the game went live and they had no time to actually test any of them. So Paladins were kind of infamous for being incredibly weak on the damage front. But even with this, they thought Paladins were going to be too strong because they could heal themselves. And they said that the biggest reason they didn't give them a taunt is because they thought a Paladin would just tank everything and then heal themselves up, and they would be too overpowered. Once they saw players in raids though, they knew this wasn't actually a concern at all. That's why the Burning Crusade, they gave them the ever so important taunt abilities, and even allowed them to have the niche of being the AoE tank, which made Paladins one of the best tanks to have for dungeon runs. It's kind of funny that they thought having the ability to heal would make them too good as a tank. But really, that cast time on healing made it not really a viable thing to do at all, and a Paladin wouldn't heal themselves unless it was an instant cast, or they had some way to bubble or literally crowd control an entire group of mobs first, as you can't use any of your passive mitigation while casting either, which means you take extra damage while channeling or casting abilities because you can't dodge, parry, or block. And now, let's take a look at a forgotten and named NPC. Located in the southern portion of the Hellfire Peninsula, walking back and forth on a broken bridge segment that is not accessible until you get a flying mount, is an NPC named Warboss Nekrogg. It's just a lone fel orc that walks back and forth. Doesn't have any dialogues or quests associated to him, his name isn't a reference to anything, and he's not important to lore. However, he did have a quest associated to him in the Burning Crusade's beta. There was actually a whole quest chain surrounding this area, and a couple of the quests in that 10 quest long chain directly involved interacting with Warboss Nekrogg. Basically, he was a leader of some of the fel orcs in the area, and had taken a scout captive. So what you were supposed to do was build a bomb and use it in order to get his attention, which would cause him to climb down from the bridge in order to investigate, which then would allow you to attack him in order to recover the key necessary to free the scout. And seeing as there were Horde and Alliance versions of this quest chain, it's kind of a wonder why they removed it from the live version of the game. It could be because the lore is kinda spotty. Warboss Nekrogg is said to be a commander of some of the fel orcs in the area, even though they all work under the Shattered Hand clan and Kargath Bladefist. Or it could be because the quest was kind of complicated. In order to obtain the quest line, you had to find a random item and then use a bomb when the NPC was close to the area, since it did patrol back and forth, which maybe caused some pathing issues with having to climb down from an inaccessible vantage point from really high up. He's like 50 yards in the air. Or it could be any number of reasons. We don't actually know why it was removed. Just that when it was removed, they left the named NPC in the game, still walking in his pathing location. It probably even still has the programming from the quest on the NPC, but since there's no way to trigger it, it's relegated to lost and forgotten status. Kind of out of the way too for people to even notice him, and not an NPC you can even fight until higher levels when you unlock flying, when he's no longer even a challenge. And now for the hidden side of WoW. Located on the southern edge of the Hellfire Peninsula is an object called the Jar of Ashes right in front of a skeleton. The skeleton is commonly called the Hellfire Peon in the WoW community, and if you click on the Jar of Ashes in front of him, you'll get a bit of flavor text, which reads, "Here is a jar of ashes. These are the ashes of my sanity, my passion, and my drive, all utterly destroyed by themselves. May all those who look upon these desolated lands of Hellfire remember this fallen peon. He shed blood for the Alliance and sacrificed for the Horde, only to be driven utterly mad by the wicked and soulless ones who devoured what he held most dear. As they feast from his toils, may they suffer his wrath. Maybe not in this world, but in every world hereafter. It is my declaration, my solemn oath, and my everlasting promise. I will avenge my suffering." Now, this little piece of flavor text doesn't really relate to anything specific in lore, and it's just another piece of flavor added to give more personality to the zone that you can discover, as this little jar is located way out of the way, and while it is accessible to players without flying mounts, it's hard-pressed to actually go to this location accidentally. So it's just a nice little Easter egg of someone in Hellfire Peninsula who probably died in some terrible way that made him just hate the world and write a very lengthy, passionate letter. There is some speculation about what this could be relating to though. Shortly before the Burning Crusade launched, a CM on the WoW forums left the company after going on a bit of a rant. You see, in the era of the end of Classic and the hype for the new first expansion, the Burning Crusade, World of Warcraft was receiving a lot of attention. Way more than the WoW development team probably expected they would ever get, as it just continuously got bigger every month and wouldn't stop growing until Cataclysm when it hit its peak. And so during the early transition period, when they were having a huge wave of people hitting the forums before they'd hired the appropriate amount of staff to deal with them, the people who were there before weren't really expecting to have to deal with a massive amount of trolls. And so it caused a couple of incidents with some of the CMs, and the CM Tessarek in particular wrote out the following in response to people calling him a douchebag in a way that circumvented the profanity filter, and he lashed out at that person. When some of the other people in the forums then started making fun of him for defending himself, this was his response. "You can't help it. Posted impassionately, they say you don't care. Posted nothing, they say you ignore. Posting with passion, you incite trolls. Posting fluff, you say nonsense. Post with facts you have, they whittle down with rationale. There is no win. There is only slow degradation. Take note, it is the first and only time you'll see someone in my position make that position. You can be me when I'm gone." And then after this, he was called out for being unprofessional. And this was his response to those lines of messages. When you can understand how a group of belligerent and angry posters can drive away people from this game, with an uncrafted and improvisational campaign of misery and spin doctoring, then perhaps you can understand the decisions I make. Until you face mobs of psychology, you will not see my side. Until you see some bright-eyed player coming into the forums wanting to know what they should spec as this class, and see them shat on and driven away by petty and selfish people who are simply leveraging for game buffs, you will not understand. You will not understand until you see it daily, for years. Until you understand that many people will trot over you to get where they're going, or to get what they want. Until you understand that so many people will agree, completely, 100% with a loud, vulgar, and assertive individual, not because he is right, but because he is taking a stand against the man. To take no critical thought in what they say, but simply to hop on board. Until you actually try to acknowledge those who do not speak on the forums, for whatever reason they have, you will not understand. If you think an archaic business formula like the customer is always right works, you fail to understand customers, not a customer. It is a collective. No one person, even myself, is truly above the whole. I simply have the unfortunate quality of being easily singled out. Now, while nothing he said is quoted directly in the flavor text, it is pretty easy to see where the parallels come with people thinking this line of flavor text is in response to Tesseric, as it's really easy to associate the wickedness and soulless ones who devoured what they held most dear to just be a parallel to the trolls on the WoW forums. And the second line about how they destroyed his sanity and passion is also pretty similar to his post about passion. And seeing as the Burning Crusade launched shortly after Tesseric left the company, it could be easy to assume that this was put in game by a fellow game developer who agreed with the things he said in the WoW forums. It's doubtful that his CM had the power to put this in the game himself before leaving, which is what a lot of people theorize, and we also don't know if he was fired or left on his own terms. But it is a popular theory that this is in reference to Tesseric and his rant on the forums, and it's pretty easy to see the parallels after reading all of his dialogues, of which I only posted a small handful. And what's also pretty hilarious about this rant is how much it relates to World of Warcraft even in the modern day. If you heard someone say what he said today, it wouldn't seem out of place at all, which is kind of funny that even in the golden era of WoW, people were very angry about the game all the time, and the constant toxic posts in the WoW forums drove the CMs crazy. Alright, and that's it for the unknown side of WoW. Make sure you watch our playlist with all the other videos in the series, or the history playlist if you want to learn more about the game and how it used to play, and also remember to not subscribe.